Thanks for coming. This is a good big crowd. This is my favorite time of the year, and as Blake said, it does seem a bit obscene to be doing a fall talk when it's short sleeve, shorts weather today. But there's also, things are a little bit crispy right now. It's super dry in the garden, and I think fall has been kind of laborious this year because of the dry, warm weather. So things that were very colorful last year aren't this year. I was looking at a list that I got of what this tour comprised of last year, and I went to all the trees on the list. So I had to switch it up this morning. So what I want to do, we're going to go out here and start, and we're going to meander our way through the garden. And I always preface this: if I'm walking too fast, please tell me to slow down. If you can't hear me, tell me to speak up. And I'll try to steer the questions towards the microphone when we get there, but I'm not going to make any promises. I'm going to forget. Does that sound like a good plan? All right, let's go out here and we'll talk about the first tree. So the star of the fall show is going to be maples. There's going to be a lot of maples on this tour. I tried to mix it up with some shrubs as well because I'm a big advocate of all those different layers in the landscape for fall interest. And I tried to mix it up a little bit so it wasn't all maples. Maples are a big player in the fall color show, and we've got a lot of really good ones here in the garden. So try to diversify, and with that in mind, this nice yellow tree behind me, this is Quercus variabilis. This is the Chinese cork tree. It's kind of in the white oak family. It looks a lot like sawtooth oak. It's got that small serrated leaf. But this is one that I've noticed over my horticulture career that always puts on a good fall show. It always has this nice yellow fall color. I like the bark. It's kind of flaky, and as its namesake would hint, the bark is used sometimes in Asia as a substitute for cork. I would not recommend doing that because it's not good for the tree, but it kind of explains that common name. Very good, consistent fall color, needs a little bit of room to do its thing. Not a real common tree, but a pretty good one to diversify the oak palette of trees that could and should be used. I've done a lot of work with oaks over my career, and this is always one that comes back up as one that always kind of catches my eye, does really well in kind of urban situations, and is something that could and should be used more, I think, from a nursery perspective. So Quercus variabilis, Chinese cork tree, really like this nice yellow fall color. The next one, we don't have to go far. We were just talking about Acer saccharum, sugar maple. This is a sugar maple cultivar called Barrett Cole. And it's a small, I don't want to say dwarf, but a tight variety that has really nice fall color. You don't typically think of sugar maples doing well in this part of the country. That's a strong northeastern maple that does better further north and east of us. This particular cultivar always does really good, and this tree always, anytime I've ever come here to visit prior to working here, I would always look for this tree because it does not disappoint. Always has nice fall color. Usually a little bit brighter, but super dry. And you think about all the reflected heat that this gets off of the brick here, I think that's doing pretty good. If you want a sugar maple in your life, I would steer towards some of the southern ones. They can be a little bit harder to find, but they're much more suited to kind of our temperature and temperament. But this is a good one if you can find it, Barrett's Cove. Any questions about those? Yes.
Did you shape that? Or is that its natural shape?
That, we did not shape that. That's its natural shape. Very tight and kind of slow growing, almost stunted, I would say. Yes.
How tall will it get?
I don't know how the ultimate height of that. It's not one that I've had a lot of experience with outside of here. I'm going to probably say that's.
Do you know how old that one is?
I do not. That's been there for a while. As long as I can remember coming here to visit, that's been there. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's probably about max height right there. Any other questions? Yes.
That's good. It's not about these two trees. You've
Okay.
got the ginkgo here.
Yep.
And they have such spectacular fall color when they turn yellow all
They
at
do.
once.
They do.
When does this normally do it?
I haven't given it permission to do its fall color
I
yet.
can see that. I can see.
So
you're
as soon
under
as I give it
tight
permission-
control. Yeah.
It's trees don't read the rules, and it's been very, very warm and dry this fall. So I think they're a little bit slow to go. And what I've noticed with ginkgos is they're always kind of doing their own thing. They're always going into fall color on their own accord. I think it's pretty close. I've been watching this ginkgo and the other ones throughout the Arboretum. They're all kind of at this stage right here. But that's a tree that typically is super, super bright, like it's almost plugged in, and it'll have that color for a couple of days and then everything falls off at the same time. So come back often and look at this. I think once we get into some consistent cool temperatures, which we haven't had, we had, I think, 2 cold days in a row a couple weeks ago, cold enough for the chemical stuff to work in the leaves, and then it warmed back up. It looks like through the weekend, we're gonna dip down into some more consistent color. So I'm gonna say probably next week, this will start to brighten up, but come back and look. There's a couple of big ones downtown that I drive by on my way into work that are more advanced than this. And that, a little bit of stress in plants' lives kind of speeds that process up, lack of water, the heat reflection and that kind of stuff. So we're pretty close to those doing their thing. It's one of my favorites for fall color. It's amazing. I don't have one on the tour, so I'm glad you asked about it. All right, we're going to keep on going. Holding true to my word, I wanted to throw in some shrubs and smaller things into the color, the fall color kaleidoscope. And this is one of my favorites for fall color traditionally and usually in a better year. This is Father Gilla, and this is a cultivar called Redneck Nation. This one typically is super bright red in the fall. And I think because of that stress of the ups and downs and the warm temperatures, it's a little bit muted, but I still think there's a lot of really nice color in here. Most Father Gilla kind of go through this color spectrum, yellows, oranges, and reds, and kind of fading to kind of dark burgundy. And all of them are really good fall color plants. I always talk about things that have winter, spring, summer, fall interest. This is one of the top ones on my list to recommend for that. Great spring flowers, good consistent leaf color through the summer, nice fall color, and decent kind of winter interest with the spent flowers on it. But one that you should definitely have in your landscape for shrubs for fall color. Lots of cultivars out there, big ones, small ones, dwarf ones. It's a really, really good plant to add to your landscape. In that theme of shrubs, right next to us is Spirea japonica. One of my favorites, this is double play candy corn. That's a winter, spring, summer, fall rock star. It looks good all year long. It's just getting started with its fall color. The newer growth will turn that bright orange and red, and the whole thing will be ablaze within the next couple weeks. Again, once we get into some more consistent, cooler temperatures. We cut these back in the spring, which I was kind of on the fence about doing, but I think that increases the spring color of the foliage and also the fall color and kind of keeps them in a more uniform shape and in bounds. You don't have to do that, but we do that because it's close to the path. There's lots of neighbors here that we want to highlight as well, but just kind of something to consider in the realm of maintaining Spirea. But again, 2 of my favorite shrubs for fall color and general winter, spring, summer, fall interest. Any questions? Yep.
That looks small for a Fothergilla for what I'm used to. Is that, do you trim that one back, or is that just a compact?
This is a compact one. This is a compact one. Anybody else? All right. Going to head this way. So I mentioned earlier that the star of the fall color show is usually anything in the Acer family. And we have a lot of really good maples here at the Raulston. It was something that JC was very proud of. And I like the story that any place you stand in the garden, you should be in view of a Japanese maple. And there's quite a few of them right here. This is a favorite of mine, again, for that multiple season of interest. This is Acer palmatum Akakawa himi. It's one of the coral bark Japanese maples. So when this bark gets wet, it kind of takes on that look of coral and kind of mimics this fall color, yellows and kind of greens. But this one is known for this really bright yellow fall color. Again, a little bit muted because it's been kind of dry and those ups and downs in the temperatures. Look at this poor calocarpa. That kind of gives you a testament to how dry it is at this time of the year. But this one, you know, more kind of upright growing. Japanese maples are very forgiving to do a little bit of pruning to get them in spaces, but you know, they come in all sizes, shapes, and colors. There's over 250 cultivars of Acer palmatum, one for any kind of interest that you like with foliage, fall color, height. This one is kind of vase-shaped, and we have done a little bit of pruning on this to kind of keep it going up with its neighbors here. So, you know, probably 15, 20 feet high, 10 to 12 feet wide, but a really, really good one for this nice bright yellow fall color. Kind of a light green throughout the growing season, and in the wintertime when the leaves are gone, you'll get the nice benefit of the coral bark. Any questions?
And what color is the bark going to be in the winter?
It's kind of this greenish yellow.
Okay.
Yep. It really stands out when the bark's wet. Yes.
Is the Bihu Japanese maple going to be on the tour?
Possibly. That's where we're going next. We're going to make one short stop right around the corner before we go there. Since Ginkgo was mentioned, I'm going to take this opportunity to point out a nice one. There's one right over here, and you can see it's just starting to turn a little bit yellow. It'll get much, much brighter than that, probably I would say after this weekend when the temperature dips down a little bit cooler and that triggers that chemical reaction, I think that'll get a little bit brighter. I also wanted to point out, here's a sugar maple across from us. This is another cultivar, but what you typically think of from a size perspective. And that's typically what they look like. They really don't like our heat and humidity. They don't like our heavy soils. You can see the trunk looks kind of black. Sap suckers attack them, and that kind of stresses it out. All those sugars in that sap of the tree attracts sooty mold, so it turns black. Then yellow jackets get attracted to that, but that's typically what you know. They kind of suffer through our growing seasons. Still a pretty fall color show, but just not suited for this part of the country. Any questions? All right, right behind y'all is Acer palmatum Bihu. This is one that's known for that, I think more of its winter interest than the fall color. And to me, this one's perfectly placed here because it's set against that evergreen backdrop. So that color really, really stands out. And that's something that I think is a neat trick to pull off when you're using plants in your garden, is to take advantage of those design traits that they have. And I really like this tree because of that, because it adds a lot to the winter landscape. The foliage is really, really nice. This one has dropped its leaves a little bit sooner than some of the other ones, but it's ready to go to sleep for the fall and into the winter, where it'll continue that nice show with that really, really pretty bark. This is one we get asked about a lot from a sourcing perspective. Because it is popular, I think it's a little bit easier to find. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure where you could locate this, but I would say if you asked a garden center for this tree, it wouldn't be hard to find, because it is really, really popular because of the color that it produces. Any questions about that? You guys are too easy today. Okay, we're gonna go up here next. Doesn't seem that long ago I did the conifer tour. So here's a conifer that has fall color. This is Taxodium disticum, Cascade Falls. This is a deciduous conifer. It's going to lose its needles, and it's just starting to do its fall color thing. It gets a really nice kind of rusty brown, and you can see that more on the inside of the needles that are doing its thing. It will, again, as it gets a little bit cooler, the whole thing will turn that nice rusty brown, and it'll drop these needles and give you that nice kind of winter texture. The bark is kind of peely on this trunk, and it just kind of continues to mound over itself. There's a couple different weepers out there. There's one called Falling Water that's much taller. Cascade Falls is wherever you stop staking it, that's as high as it's going to go. I've seen these really low where they just drape on the ground, and I've seen these tall like this. And this is a plant that looks good with a couple of them. It gives you a really nice kind of winter interest, almost kind of a cousin it feel with those weeping branches that really hang down. But I really, really like this tree. It's one of my favorite conifers for the garden. Doesn't take up a lot of space. They can take pruning if you like. There's a really nice garden down the road, Moore Farm in Florence, South Carolina, where they've used this on espaliers and other things, because it can kind of take that pruning, and they're super duper, really good urban trees. They can take a less than desirable soil biome than other things, but a really, really good tree for the garden. And I love the fall color interest. Any questions?
Is this a larch?
No, it's a taxodium. Yeah. A larch is another different conifer, but it also loses its needles. There's three. There's larch, taxodium, and metasequoia, the dawn redwood. Any other questions? This way. We're going to stop at this crepe myrtle. Traditionally, a crepe myrtle is a really good plant for fall color. And more, we're starting to see this in the fall. Here we are, November 7th. There's not very many leaves on this tree at all. Typically, reds, yellows, oranges, all at the same time, kind of jaw-dropping fall color. This is a tree that's been affected by changes in the climate, overplanting, planting incorrectly. It also gets stressed out by crepe myrtle bark scale, but it's become very susceptible to a leaf spot disease. Untreated, that leaf spot disease causes the tree to upsize its leaves earlier. It just shuts down and gives up early in the season. Over time, that can be detrimental. It kind of stresses the plant out. It has to work harder to produce foliage in the spring. But it's something that we're seeing more and more of in the landscape, and it's kind of a cyclical thing. It wasn't so bad last year. We had pretty good fall color on crepe myrtles. This year, I'm seeing this kind of all over Raleigh and all the way down through Charlotte, where this thing is used a lot in the landscape. But worth pointing out, it's usually a pretty good stellar tree for fall color, but this has become more of a problem with them in urban landscapes. Any questions about that?
Could you talk about the difference between the leaf spot and the blight? One is an insect, isn't it?
I don't know what blight is in terms of crepe myrtle.
Scaling, I'm sorry.
The bark scale. Yeah, the crepe myrtle bark scale is an introduced insect from Asia that feeds on the phloem of the tree. You really don't notice it until it's been on there for a while. So a scale insect isn't very terrestrial. They don't move around a lot. They will land on a plant. They begin feeding. That feeding produces a lot of waste material. The waste material has a lot of sugar in it that attracts powdery mildew, sooty mold. That's the black that you'll see on crepe myrtles. That's a result of that heavy feeding. That feeding stresses out the tree. The black sooty mold interrupts photosynthesis, as you would think. It's not going to directly kill the tree, but it's going to stress it out if it goes untreated over a large amount of time. So when that insect, that adult, they're usually dying this time of the year. They've got a waxy white coating around them that protects them. Female will lay her eggs under her body. She dies. They're protected. They hatch out in the spring, and that's when they move around a lot, and that's the best time to treat them. That stage is called the crawler. They're little, tiny little pink insects. They'll go out on the edges of branches, they'll stake out their claim, and they'll sink in their mouth parts and cover themselves up and start that whole process over again. Because it is a pretty aggressive insect, they can produce multiple generations within the same year, and it's become a real problem because it's used a lot in commercial and residential landscapes. It's not that terribly hard to treat. It usually requires a registered insecticide that you can put in the soil so that the tree takes it up, that you're not spraying it in the plant. It's better to time that treatment when the trees aren't flowering so that you don't have to worry about the pollinators. You can take care of that insect with water. You can blast it off, but you're going to disturb the bark doing that. And horticulture oils also will work as well. Some combination of that. The best way is to do really good cultural practices. Plant the right depth, plant in the right spot, make sure it gets mulch, make sure it gets moisture. All those cultural things will help keep it from getting stressed out. That's my diatribe on crepe myrtle bark scale during a fall interest tour. Thank you for asking, though. I get asked all the time. I think there's going to be an article in the newsletter about it, actually, too. All right, we're going to go this way. So if you kind of look around the perimeter here, it's very muted, I think. There's not a lot of like jaw-dropping, holy cow, look at that going on. There's some color, and it was kind of a stretch to find things in kind of a linear path. So big jump from the last one to this one. The one I want to talk about next is, this is a weeping Cornus cusa. It's a cultivar called Lustgarten's Weeping. It's been in the nursery trade for a really long time. It's a really, really good tried and true performer. This is the Korean version of our native dogwood, but it has a lot of very similar characteristics, similar flower, similar fall color. The thing I like about this particular one is I like the weeping habit, and it's pretty consistent with its fall color. Doesn't get a lot of foliar diseases that are prone to our native dogwood. You can see this is pretty clean, and powdery mildew is a really bad pest of dogwoods, and this one seems to be fairly resistant to it. But usually we'll have this nice kind of oranges, yellows, and burgundy fall color, and I think it's accentuated by that kind of weeping habit. In the theme of winter, spring, summer, fall, I like Cusa dogwoods because they have peeling bark. That's really pretty, and you can see it down on the base there, and that'll carry up through the stems. So when this is done, you'll have that nice weeping texture as well as the pretty bark on this tree. A perennial favorite, and one that I always look for this time of the year. Probably max height. It's usually wider than it is tall. And this is one that you don't want to have to do a lot of pruning to, because you don't want to do anything to disturb that shape of the tree itself. It's a bit of a stretch to see the next one I wanted to talk about. There's a nice vignette right here, but Hydrangea quercifolia. That's another tried and true shrub for fall interest and winter, spring, summer, fall. It gets kind of a burgundy color, and it's late. It's just starting to do that too. So as you kind of walk by, take a peek. It's too hard to get a big group of people kind of through the center there. But in keeping with mixing up trees and shrubs, I wanted to point out that we have a lot of really good cultivars scattered all through the garden, and all of them have really nice fall color. It's one that I recommend to people all the time. Yes?
Do the Cornus cusa typically can handle a little more sun than our Cornus florida?
They're a little bit more forgiving in the heat in general. A lot of the problems with our native dogwood are improper planting and putting in the wrong spot. They don't like parking lots. They don't like poor soil. They don't like wet feet. I think they need a little bit of respite from the sun, at least in some part of their growing spectrum throughout the day. And they tend to be pretty tough trees given those things and good cultural practices. They're also a tree that suffered greatly from the changes in climate with diseases. And if you really are sold to just Cornus florida, there's a lot of really good cultivars out there. The University of Tennessee produced a bunch back in the early 2000s. Cherokee Princess is one of the better ones that always jumps to mind. But if that's something that you're interested in, look up the University of Tennessee cultivars. Those are the better ones out there. And there's a lot of other ones too. There's been a lot of work done with dogwoods. Any other questions? That way. This is another favorite genus of mine. This is Protea persica, and this is a weeping cultivar just called pendula. This Persian ironwood is the common name. Protea has, I don't want to say it's a new tree in the nursery world, but it hasn't been around for a really long time. And it's related to witch hazel, so it has kind of that weird flower, not as showy as a witch hazel, the late winter, early spring, but it's a really, really tough urban tree. Where this grows native, it's in a very inhospitable region of the world, so it's prone to less than desirable urban soils, different types of temperature extremes. This will grow in Chicago. It does well here all the way down into Atlanta, up through the mid-Atlantic. Protea is a really good urban tree. It will have nice flaky bark, usually without fail, really pretty fall colors ranging from yellow to orange to red, sometimes all at the same time, but it's very consistent with those characteristics. There's a lot of work being done on this to develop some different ones. There's some fastigiate ones that are really nice. There's a bunch of other weeping ones. I've seen a couple variegated ones that are nice. I've got colleagues that have collected this in the wild to look for kind of variation in them so they can introduce some more. But it's a really, really good tree for urban landscapes. Not going to say maintenance free, but pretty close. And just a favorite genus of mine because of all those things. This guy probably is going to outgrow this spot. They can get pretty big and they grow really, really fast. And again, a little bit muted, kind of late for this time of the year. You should be doing more of its thing. You can see some of the red starting to come out on some of the newer growth, but this is one to keep on your radar for fall color and interest. Yes?
Is the reticulation consistent, or is it coming out because of the fall?
I think the fall. Yeah, that's not a usual thing. It's attractive. Mm-hmm. I almost wonder if there might be some nutrient stuff going on there too.
I was wondering if there was an iron uptake problem with it.
It might be, but it's been such a weird fall. All right, we're going right over here next. This is a Simina triloba. This is our native pawpaw tree, and most people I know either love this tree or hate it. It produces a fruit that's kind of tasty, I think. I don't know how best to describe it. It's kind of has a banana consistency, but it's a little bit sweeter than a banana. Great big seeds in the middle of it, so you don't just bite into it. You have to do a lot of work to get the fruit. But a lot of work is being done with this to produce ones just for their fruit because it's an interesting tree. The thing that a lot of people don't like about this is it suckers like crazy. So that's what all these guys are. It produces these colonies and kind of spreads around. I like that it fruits. I like that it kind of forms those colonies because it usually has a really pretty yellow fall color. And in the wild where this grows, it's pretty to see this growing in these great big colonies with all that bright yellow fall color. It's really, really pretty. I like the texture of it in the wintertime also, but if you are interested in fruiting native trees, this is one to definitely put on your radar. There's a lot of cultivars coming out of Penn State. They develop ones that have bigger, more tasty fruits, and more people are getting into selling. There's somebody local that was at the spring sale this year that was just selling pawpaws, and they disappeared really, really quickly. But a favorite native for fall color. Any questions?
Is that self-fertile or does it need, is that a male-female kind of thing?
I think, and I may be wrong, I think it's a male-female thing. Because if you have one clone, I think you need I think you need both to produce the fruit.
Okay.
Because I know people that have had these and have never produced the fruit, and
You
that's
get
the only.
fruit on this?
I don't know. I've not seen any on it.
Okay.
Tim's not a fan because it goes everywhere. And I get that. When you're trying to do a garden and you got those suckers coming up, I get it.
Dig them up, pot them up, and give them away at the plant giveaway.
Yeah, yeah. I like that idea. All right, we're going right over here next. So this is one of my favorite small trees in general because of all the different attributes that it has. This is a witch hazel. This is Hemimalius ex intermedia gelina. This is one of the hybrids that produces kind of a coppery red flower in the late winter, early spring, just completely covered with flowers. And you can see the flower buds that have already set for this coming up season. It's going to be loaded, but fall color never disappoints on a witch hazel. And this one's doing all of its things at one time: oranges, yellows, reds, and fading to kind of this dark burgundy color, kind of all at the same time. Does not disappoint. This is kind of a best case scenario, a little bit of protection throughout the day so that it's not in full blazing sun. I've planted these in full blazing sun and they do okay, but I think from a fall color perspective and a heavier flower set, it needs a little bit of protection at some point of the day to produce all those things. But very, very rich in the fall color spectrum, and I'm glad I stumbled upon this when I kind of rehashed the tour today. One of my favorite plants for fall color. And lots and lots of cultivars out there, pretty much any color and size that you would think of and would like. Yes?
Do you know if this one is grafted? Because I bought how do you say it, Helena, whatever you say. I bought one and it died down to the ground, and now things are coming up from the ground, and I'm wondering if that's going to be the same thing or different, like is it Virginiana or something?
They often, a lot of witch hazels are grafted. And if you look at this one, you can see the rootstock coming up, all those little suckers. That's all stuff from the roots. So we spend a lot of time making sure those don't get big. I worked at a garden and inherited a collection, and probably half of the collection was reverted rootstock. And you don't really know that until it flowers. If you notice that it's not the color flower what you paid for, that 9 times out of 10, it's rootstock. Paying attention to where you buy these from, good quality nurseries, that shouldn't be a problem. And there's a lot of mail order nurseries that sell witch hazels, but they are often grafted.
In general, would edge of wood siding be the best conditions?
Yeah, I think so. They're pretty tough plants. They can take a lot of sun, but I think they're happier kind of that edge of the woods where they get a big blast of sun, but at some point of the day, there's a little bit of protection. This one has the best fall color in the garden right now, and it's in a pretty protected spot. It's going to get big, but we're good about doing that here. Any other questions? Y'all are too easy. We got one more left. It's right across the path here. So last one of the afternoon. This is Fraxinus excelsior, and it's a cultivar called aureofolia. This is the golden desert ash tree, and I'm not sure if this was cut back on purpose, but this is often done with this tree because part of its claim to fame is it has nice kind of yellow, the twigs turn kind of yellow where it gets the common name golden desert ash, and it always has really good yellow fall color. So those two things kind of go hand in hand. It also has kind of this really interesting dark, the buds are kind of a dark chocolate brown, which stand out when the leaves fall off of it, kind of adding to that winter interest. And this style of pruning is called stooling, where you cut things back and kind of let it sucker back up, let it grow for a couple seasons and cut it back again. That keeps all that color and all that interest kind of at eye level. Long term, it may not, the tree may not like it but ashes are pretty exuberant, and this one can kind of take this. I don't think this particular species gets really big anyway, but I've seen this done a lot with this one because of that twig color. But I really like that, and from a winter garden standpoint, and also the fall color. This could take a little more sun. The fall color would be more pronounced, and I think the twig color would be kind of a brighter yellow also, were it in the sun a little bit stronger. Yes.
Emerald ash borer is a terrible problem for the north.
Mm-hmm.
Would this kind of plant be affected by it?
Yes. They are non-discriminatory, the emerald ash borer, and it's not as bad here as it is in other parts of the country. And what's happening to it right now is the populations have peaked because they've eaten all their host plants and there's nothing left to eat. It has been found in North Carolina. It's a relatively easy and inexpensive insect to treat with a soil applied insecticide. You apply it to the soil, the tree takes it up, you get usually 2 growing seasons out of it, and it won't be affected by the insect. If you don't have the insect in your area, it's really not something it's just gonna pop up all by itself. You need that population of trees to kind of carry it through. If you think about where it caused the most damage in the Midwest, ash was the major urban street tree, and most of the nurseries up there lived and thrived on ash trees, and it just completely decimated the street tree population. There was some concern that our native fringe tree, Chionanthus, is in the same family, and there was some concern that it would cross over to that, but I don't think that ever came to any kind of fruition. That would have been kind of a terrifying thing to wipe that out in the natural landscape. The garden I worked at prior to here, we had a big ash collection, and I worked with entomologists that wanted the insect to come. So we treated our specimen trees and left the other ones alone to see if we could get. And in the entire time I lived there, we never had the insect come through. It was close, but it never came through the area that in Charlotte. Anybody else? Yes.
Someone looks like they cut it back to the ground. Could you do something similar to that with a coral bark maple? I mean, this was cut back for the pretty stem color on
Yep.
the new growth. On a coral bark maple, once it gets really big and old, it's not colorful anymore.
It gets
The
kind of
stems-
woody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I need to keep it above deer browse level. Can I cut it down to about 4 or 5 feet, or is that going to kill it?
I think maples are less forgiving than other things.
Okay.
If you think about the red twig dogwoods,
Right.
that's something that can take that. And it's something that every other year or every 3 years,
Right.
when you cut them down every year, that causes stress to the plant. And I'm thinking of the red twig maples and dogwoods in particular. I've seen on those that are cut back every year, they have more scale insect problem. They have more twig blight problems than ones that are less frequent. And that kind of makes sense because you're not putting it through stress every year. You're letting it build itself back up. The disease cycle doesn't get a chance to get into the plant. Whereas if you're doing it every year, you've got all those wounds.
What if you did it less frequently, once every 4 or 5 years?
It might be worth trying, but I've not seen it done, which kind of scares me a little bit. You would think that somebody would do that.
That yellow bar is Acer Negundo or
Yep.
something that's over there. That's in the Acer family, and that one
Yep.
has been cut back. And
That's a different animal though. That's a floodplain tree. It's very short-lived in the spectrum of maples, 20, 30 years. That's a tree that's used to getting knocked down by habitat and springing back up. And even doing that, I think, shortens the life of that. And that's another thing that I had a big bed of those planted because I had a nursery friend that grew a bunch of them and couldn't sell them. So I planted a bed of 30 of them to have that big fall color. And we cut them back every year, and they slowly just kind of petered away because of that. But I think if we'd have done it every other year, that would have lasted longer. But they grow so fast, it was easy just to replace it.
second question, what is that tree? It has a gorgeous shape. I want to climb in it.
Right here,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I think that's an Asian fringe tree, Chionanthus retusus.
Is that evergreen?
What's that?
Is it evergreen?
It's tardily deciduous.
Okay.
It'll hold on to that. This is a tree that's very tough from an urban perspective. Not a lot of fall color to speak of, kind of a dusty brown, but that'll all turn. You're done raking leaves for the year. This thing's still green in your garden. You put your tarps and your rakes away. You get a cold night and everything drops at the same time. It's got a big, coarse, leathery leaf, so it makes a bit of a mess when it does that. That'll be the last thing that drops its leaves probably in the garden. The bark and the shape add a lot of winter interest.
Yeah.
And unlike our native fringe tree that flowers after the leaves are produced, so you have that white flower against that dark green foliage. It's really, really pretty.
Okay.
Same kind of fruit set that you get from our native. It's kind of a inky, bluish black seed pod, but that's a really, really good plant.
Okay. The shape right now
It's
is
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Yeah. I hate to admit it, but I've not paid a lot of attention to that. We were setting up these tents last week, and I was like, how long has this been here? I didn't even notice it. Any other questions? Well, thanks for coming out on a nice day. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.